Hello there and welcome. It is time to assemble Count Dooku. This video will be focusing on magnetizing his optional arms. The full assembly video is also available on my channel, but this one will just be focused on the magnetization because a lot of people seem to be interested in that side of things, and I don't think there's a lot out there for that. So let's get started. As you can see, I've built the torso. I also put his lightsaber arm on, but that of course doesn't need to be on there before doing this. I've got green stuff, and I am just going to fill the hole in the torso where his arm is going to go. Now with the hobby knife, I'm not only going to get the green stuff to be flat and even with the rest of the model, I'm actually going to slightly indent and take a little more out, and that is because when I put a magnet in, that's going to displace some of the material, and we want to err on the side of being a little bit indented rather than having extra or having the magnet stick out, because if the magnets are sticking out, then there's going to be a little bit of space between. But if it's indented instead and there's a little bit of space between the magnets, they should still hold. Now the magnets I use are 2 millimeters in diameter and 1 millimeter thick. So as you can see, I use a little stack of them, push one in, and I get my nail in between them to make sure that the one that I'm trying to place doesn't come out with the rest of them. Then instead of using the hobby knife, which is metal and would attract the magnet, I use a pencil to push that in a little more and get rid of any green stuff that I feel is excess. After that, I finished building the rest of the model, and so I'm going to move on to the arms. Now these arms have fairly big pins, which will make it easy. That meant there was also a large hole in the torso that needed to be filled, but there's lots of room for those small magnets. But now I'm going to completely remove those pins from the two optional arms. So I start by cutting the pins off with my snips, but it leaves quite a bit behind, so I need to use the hobby knife to really make sure that pin is completely off and we're leaving a flat surface. Now I wrap the arm with paper towel for two reasons. One, if any of the pieces are bumpy, it makes it easier to hold on to tightly without leaving a bunch of marks in your finger. It also is a backstop for the hobby knife if I overdo it and end up kind of pushing it into my finger. Now I'm pushing the back of the hobby knife firmly, but trying to be slow and make sure that I'm not digging into the model, but shaving off that little bit that's left of the pin. Now that I've made sure the whole thing is flat, I'm actually going to dig in a little bit with the hobby knife into where I want my magnet. So this is kind of like what would be called making a pilot hole. This is a little indent for my drill, so that it's not sliding all over the place on a flat surface when I'm trying to start the hole for my magnet. So I kind of just stab into the middle of where I want my magnet, and then turn the hobby knife and cut around in kind of a little cone to make a little indent for my drill. Now I'm using a 2mm drill bit, which is on a manual little hand drill, and trying to drill straight into the optional arm. You'll have to test the depth with the magnets, make sure it's a millimeter in depth, and the hobby knife helps to get rid of any remaining material that hasn't completely come out with the drill, making that, kind of smoothing that circle out again. Now you want to make sure that you have your stack of magnets against the magnet that is already in the body. This is because you need to make sure that your magnets are the proper direction, even when you're testing the depth. I actually lost a arm on K2SO, the Legion figure, because I tested it and the magnet stuck without even any glue. So now I always make sure, even if I'm just testing depth without glue, that the magnets are the proper orientation. Now again, you can see I'm using my nail to get in between the magnet that I want to stay and the rest of the stack of the magnets, because if I don't, then that magnet is just going to come out, because they are fairly strong and light. Once I'm happy with the depth of the hole and think that the magnet isn't sticking out much or at all, then I'm ready to add a drop of my plastic glue. Now it's important to note with the plastic glue that obviously it works very well and very quickly with plastic on plastic, but when you have plastic and a magnet, it takes much longer to dry before it'll actually stay when you manipulate it. Now once you have the one magnet in your drop of glue, you're going to have to push it in because the glue will fill the space and keep the magnet out. So I push with a paper towel so that as the glue is pushed out, I'm absorbing it with a paper towel and not leaving it behind. And here's the final result. I kind of had to rotate the arm a little bit because the way I put it on at first wasn't actually quite the right orientation that it should be. But once I rotated it a little bit, then it fit right up against the torso of the model quite nicely. You can probably tell that it's not been glued normally, but it's a very small seam, and any sort of priming or painting should cover that up.